Why things always falls to the ground? Why doesn't it go up? That's what came to the mind of Sir Isaac Newton when he saw an apple fall down a tree. So he started experiments to find out what's happening. After doing experiments and research, he realized that something interesting happens between every two objects. So he realized that there must be some kind of attractive force that works between two objects. Today we call that force gravity. But Sir Isaac Newton didn't stop there. He came up with the law of universal gravitation, which we are going to simulate today using Unity game engine. So before going for the simulation, let's see what is this law of universal gravitational force. In simple terms, the law states that any two masses attract each other with a force equal to a constant multiplied by the product of the two masses and divided by the square of distance between them. So this is the formula that Newton came up with. So if we represent this law in a formula, this is how it looks like. So we have F, which is going to be the gravitational force, and the G is the gravitational constant. We have m1, which is going to be the mass of the object 1, and m2, which is going to be the mass of the object 2, divided by the square of the distance between the centers of the masses. So now that we know what is the law of gravitational force, and also we know the formula, let's try to simulate using Unity. So now we know that there's a attractive force called gravitation. It works on every two objects that in this universe. So in here I have created two objects, and one of them is Earth and one of them is Moon. So each of these object has a mass, and also there's a script called attractor that I created to calculate the gravitational force between the object also added to each of these objects. So if we take a look at the script, so I have created a constant to store the gravitational constant. So the gravitational constant is in here. The gravitational constant is quite high. For this simulation, I have used this higher value of G to calculate the force between the objects. So in here, in the below, I have applied the formula. So G will be the constant of gravitation, and the mass of the object 1 and the mass of the object 2, and I'm dividing it by the square of distance between those two objects. Now in the end, I'm applying that force to the object. So here's the simulation. So let's see what will happen when I run this simulation. As you can see, this the moon gets attracted to the Earth. So let me run it again. The moon gets attracted to the Earth, but Earth doesn't move. The reason for that is the difference between the mass of each object. So for the small object has a higher acceleration than the small object. We can calculate that acceleration using the Newton's second law, which means we can calculate the acceleration of an object by dividing the force by its mass. So if we calculate the mass acceleration of this one, will be higher because the mass of this object is small, and the acceleration of the Earth is really small compared to this, because Earth has a higher mass than the small object. That's why when we run this simulation, this moon gets attracted to the bigger object. So let me add another planet. It will be so small. As you can see, it's smaller than the moon, smaller than the moon. So if I run this simulation, that the smaller planet get attracted to the moon, and the moon get attracted to the bigger object, which is Earth. And after both of them get attracted, and the small object gets attracted to the biggest one, because smallest object and the biggest object is way quite higher than the force between this medium one and the small one. There's another force that acts on moon, which is going to accelerate on another direction. So that's why moon doesn't fall to Earth. So in order to simulate that one, I'm going to stop the simulation, and I'm going to give a force to the moon in the y direction. Now I'm going to remove the small planet. So if I run this now, as you can see, once I run this simulation now, the moon gets orbited around Earth. So the reason for that is I applied another force in the direction of y to the moon, which will add a force upwards, and also there's the gravitational force which works between moon and Earth, and so the net force will works on, so the force that I applied to the moon and the gravitational force make the moon orbit around Earth. So this is a small simulation that I created to play with the law of universal gravitation. This project will be linked below. Use the code to play around and have an idea about this gravitational law. You can add multiple planets, or you can try it with different objects. So this is how the gravitation works, and thanks for watching. I see you guys in another video.